Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Marianne Nash. She is a nutritionist and she was also the clinical lead for the L+M Cancer Center, new facility in Waterford, Connecticut. It is a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sean.
We go back to when I took a tour with some of my fellow radio cohorts. So we took a tour of the facility, fantastic facility. But before we get into it, I want to go way back in time, okay? I want to go back to a time when, because you've been involved from the beginning, when you were standing outside looking at a piece of land, okay, going, we paid that much for this? You remember that story that you told me?
I do.
It was very unimpressive
well,
initially.
I didn't quite say we paid that much for this. It was. Three of us, the project manager and the facilities director, took a trip and put our big boots on and trekked into the property and to where the architects had figured out we'd start the point of build. And I just kept thinking, we can't possibly. We're on a ledge, you know, it's beautiful. I mean, there's tons of trees, it's a gorgeous property. I can't envision this.
Yeah, you couldn't see it.
Couldn't put it together.
But how did you leave there? Did they convince you? Oh, it's going to be fine, Marianne. It's going to be great. How did they convince you?
So we kept walking.
Okay.
And Brenda, who was the facilities director and continues to be, showed us different pieces on the property. This is where this is going to be, and all of a sudden, you could kind of see a clearing through the trees, and it was like,
literally and figuratively.
Really. And you could say, gee, this, I could see this happening. And then as they started to clear the trees, as the dynamite started to, take out pieces of boulder.
Because you were going up there constantly checking out.
Yes, and it was just unbelievable. And, because we were in this process from the day we saw that empty kind of lot to the point we are right now, it's just, that dream became a reality.
It was like a sort of not a falcon, but a phoenix, rising from the ashes, so to speak, into what it is now.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah. The L+M Cancer Center. I mean, the name is kind of self-explanatory, but maybe summarize what it is.
So we had a great vision by our CEO to bring academic quality care into New London County. And he partnered with the best of the best. And we have Dana-Farber as our academic affiliation for medical oncology, which most people think of as the chemotherapy world of cancer care. We have Yale School of Medicine for our radiation oncology, and they've actually been a partner with L+M for over 15 years. So they're not new to us, but they are very renewed with this second affiliation. And then we have a third affiliation, which is with Brown University, and they see all of our GYN oncology patients. So in that grouping of strong medicine, as you might say, we also have some amazing support services. We have full-time nutrition care for patients. We have social workers. We have actually even social work interns who are learning the trade, as we say. We have financial counselors. So patients can come in a one-stop shopping environment. We're also bringing to New London County the access to the clinical trials that are only provided at academic centers. We also will have survivorship on board very soon, second opinion clinics, and even genetic counseling. So we are truly a one-stop shopping.
Some of the other L+M shows that we've had on, L+M is in a situation where it's kind of landlocked. So if it's going to do any expanding, it has to be, and this could actually be an advantage. You go out into the community where the people are instead of having them come to you. And obviously you wouldn't be able to build a fantastic cancer center, by the main campus. It just isn't any room there. This seems like the perfect place for it. And also strategically, it's a good place because before this, you were either going to Yale, if you were in Connecticut. And if you were in Rhode Island, were you going all the way to Boston? Is that where you were going? Going all the way to Boston?
Or possibly to Rhode Island Hospital.
Okay.
But you were traveling.
Yeah.
And, I met somebody not too long ago who said to me, I used to get on a train every single day and go up to Boston. I would have my chemo, then I'd have 4 days of IV fluids. And she said, I just wish this was here then, because I wouldn't have had to do that. And she said, I wanted to be seen at Dana-Farber but the only option I had was getting on that train every day. And when you've had chemotherapy, you don't feel like getting back on a train. You're sick, you know, it's not comfortable. So we're bringing that care to them in that local environment. And it's close to them, it's close to their family. It's just a great fit for the community.
And it's close for 2 states because, you know, for Rhode Island people, pretty much right over the border. It's right in Waterford, Connecticut. And again, if you were in Connecticut and you had to go to Yale, well, it's just right here for you
Right.
too. So it's and also the facility itself. We're going to get into all everything, but the facility itself. After you looked at that plot of land and saw all the trees, it was nice. Now that it's built, it's also very green, isn't it?
It's green. The building was designed, it has LEED certification. It was designed to take into account the environment and to make sure that what we were doing was the best for that parcel of land, and it was going to be the healthiest for that parcel of land. It is, now as I see it, it's one of the most beautiful centers. You walk down that main corridor in medical oncology, and no matter what season it is, these gorgeous trees change leaves or they drop leaves. You see wildlife out the back of the infusion bays. It's just a serene environment for a cancer patient.
And again, there you go. That's significant because when you're getting cancer treatments, you know, a person's psyche, their mindset is very important, I would imagine.
It is.
And if you can be sitting in a quiet area looking out, and we took a tour of the facility. Like I said, there are giant windows where you can look out and see the woods. And just again, depending on the season, like you just said, picturesque. And that, that mindset, that calming influence is a big deal, isn't it?
It is. And that we had, to build the building, we had patient advocates. So they played a huge role in what they wanted to see in that building. And I think for the most part, we have met every one of their desires.
Yeah.
And one of the big issues were that having these private infusion bays, so that if they wanted to, they could have privacy, but they also had an ability, feeling well enough, to go out into this common room which overlooks this beautiful, beautiful area, which eventually, and actually very soon, will have a magnificent healing garden.
Nice.
So that they'll overlook not just the greenery, but now some beautiful gardens.
One of the things you mentioned a minute ago, and I remember this specifically when we took the tour. When we took the tour, it was designed so that we could talk about it on the radio. And when we went, the facility wasn't quite open yet. It was just about to open. They were still tweaking a few things. And one of the things that you mentioned was everything was great about the design, but it was all included was I guess past patient recommendations. So it wasn't just architects and doctors and builders that were involved in this. There were actual people that would use the facility as a patient.
Those were our patient advocates.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because in many cases they overrode what the architects wanted, they overrode what the physicians wanted. And we work in healthcare and we make assumptions about what patients want instead of going to the patient. In this design process, we went to the patient. And so the patient told us, this, we wanted to see this. We wanted to be able to have private areas changing, especially in radiation oncology. They weighed in heavily on those things. And we saw a very different perspective.
Were some things surprising to you?
Very surprising.
Like what?
Well, we see, for the most part, chemotherapy rooms. So we see 5 or 6 chairs. They may be divided by a curtain. And in fact, many of the physicians said, well, our patients love to sit and have this social time with them. What we found from the patients, they didn't like that.
No.
They wanted to be by themselves. If they weren't feeling well, they really wanted to have that private space. I also was very surprised with one of the patients when we did a list. Give us the top 3 things that you wanted to see in a cancer center, and the top area that patient wanted to see was that she would have direct sight to her nurses at all times. And
the human companionship, or there's something about the safety.
She wanted to feel safe, and she said she was treated. One of the things we did when we chose these patient advocates, we chose them not just for patients who were treated in this community, but patients who were treated elsewhere. So patients who were treated maybe at those academic settings. And one of the things that this individual told us was that she was so frightened when she was having chemotherapy, because chemotherapy for all intents and purposes is a poison, that she wanted to feel safe that her nurse was close. So that vision and that sight of vision was so imperative to her.
And one of the things, another thing I remember is that was important to patients, and you've implemented it, is sort of I guess the best way to describe it would be sort of like an express check-in and out sort of a thing, where they kind of made the arrangements ahead of time so that everything is taken care of when they go. They just kind of go right in and get their treatment and then just leave, right?
So in medical oncology, which is the chemotherapy, we just actually have started a kind of a new system. So patients really don't even make a stop at the desk. They go right back to the common room, and then from the common room, their nurse will pick them up to take them to chemotherapy. Radiation is a quick come down the hallway, go into radiation, and the therapists come right out and pick them up. We've been very
that's proactive, you know.
And we're trying. You know, it's a work in progress.
Right.
So we had some glitches in the beginning, just us getting used to the system, not the patient getting used to it.
It's different, you know.
It's a very different process. But as we see patient satisfaction rising with that, we know how important it is for them to be in and out of those centers.
So when I was there taking the tour, again, not quite open yet, there were technicians in there calibrating and tweaking on the last minute. You know, maybe I hadn't slept for 24 hours, just those last minute things. It was an amazing, you could feel the energy and feel the vibe in there.
And the energy among the staff is something that I've never worked with, and it energizes me every time I walk in there. You know, they built the building. They were the people on the front line saying, this is what I want to see in this building. And again, just like the patient advocates, you know, many times they overrode what the architects or even the builders wanted to do. So they are so ingrained in that building. It's their building, and they're so proud of it. And it's a pleasure to work there.
Do you think other facilities elsewhere might take a few notes from this place and say, you know what, this is the way to do it, and you know, it could be the future?
I actually think they're already taking notes. We hear from the architects that many of them have contacted them. Tell me about this process. Tell me about the building process. Tell me about having those user groups and having the patient advocates, and you know, how did that come to be? And it's not just a beautiful building, but it's the workings of that building and the processes in that building.
Is there a specific website for the Cancer Center itself?
There is the L+M website, and then within the website we actually have a cancer
link
tab.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we'll put the graphic, the link up on the screen for you to go to, and we will take a break and come back. Mary Ann Nash, nutritionist and also the clinical lead on the L+M Cancer Center in Waterford, Connecticut. We'll be back. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Mary Ann Nash. She's a nutritionist and was also the clinical lead for the L+M Cancer Center. Let's talk about you as a nutritionist. What are your day-to-day duties? You know, off the air, talk a little bit about food. So let's talk about nutrition a little bit for a second.
Sure.
For a second.
Well, my role at the Cancer Center is twofold. So I see patients in treatment, and we can do a lot of symptom management with nutrition. We can manage nausea, diarrhea, all of the GI symptoms pretty easily with some controlled things in food. And then the second part of my role is in prevention. So I do a lot of work in the community talking about what it is to prevent cancer. And that's a great lead-in to why we did what we did as far as the Cancer Center. You know, unfortunately, the rates of cancer are rising in this country. So the CDC looks at what state has the highest rates and so forth. Connecticut has the highest rates of cancer.
Do we know why?
I don't think so. I mean, lots of people want to make assumptions. Cancer's not that simple of a disease. I think of cancer like a tree with like 100 roots. And there are certain roots that, you know, if you're exposed to certain things, are probably going to trigger a response in the cells. But even within a same family, having the same food, having the same, exposure to the elements, one may get cancer and the others don't. So it's not a simple disease to say it's just one thing that contributes to it.
It seems like there's a bit of irony in medical advancement and research and progress being made in treatments, and we're hoping eventually a cure for cancer. But then at the same time, cancer rates go up.
Well, our boomers are also getting older.
Yeah.
So, if you think about it, so many of the baby boomers smoked. Smoking doesn't just connect to lung cancer, but it connects to many other types of cancers, including bladder cancer, which is rising pretty steadily. Many boomers were heavy drinkers. We think of head and neck cancers, esophageal cancer, and the rates of those rising in those individuals. So I think, some of it has been our lifestyle. And as we've gotten more information and understanding about why we shouldn't smoke and why we should limit the amount of alcohol, we may start to see those trends going down in certain types of cancer. The sad thing about New London County is that with Connecticut having the highest rates of cancer, New London County has the highest rates in the state. So we are, like, if you look at a CDC map, which shows you, maybe it's color coded. New London County would be this bright red glaring sunlight, which is telling the rest of the country that this area has these incredibly high rates of cancer.
But there's got to be something environmentally that's causing it, or
I'm not sure it's that simple.
Yeah.
But to blame one thing is pretty difficult to do, and it takes a lot of years to understand the etiologies of a lot of these cancers. And that's one of the reasons that it's so imperative that we have cancer care in this community, and a lot of cancer care, so that patients have options and they're able to get their treatments locally. When we partnered or became an affiliate of the Dana-Farber Community Care, we have physicians who go to Dana-Farber into Boston once or twice a month. They spend days in clinics in their specialties. We have the second opinion clinics, so we have the ability to have them weigh in on our cases, so that, again, they have multiple eyes looking at a cancer patient and deciding what the best course of treatment is.
Dana-Farber people ever come down here, ever?
We do have Dana-Farber physicians who come here. We have a Dana-Farber genetic counselor who's here now once a month, who does genetic screening, especially for individuals who may be at risk for breast cancer or ovarian cancer. So, we have a lot of options now right here in the community that haven't been there before.
When I was taking the tour, one of the places we stopped at and saw physicists who are interesting people in general, but when they haven't had sleep for a little while and they're doing those last-minute calibrations, it was fascinating to hear her talk. And it's interesting to hear the progress that's being made. For example, I believe she was working on something for radiation treatment. Mm-hmm. And one of the improvements, and this is, and she actually explained it in a way where a layperson would be able to understand that you can fine-tune it now so that it's really, the idea is to target it more and more tightly so it's really just hitting the cancerous cells and less of the good stuff around it. And that's just a very simple way of explaining that progress is being made in radiation treatment.
Oh, radiation is, every day is closer to minimal symptoms in a patient. And I'll give you a really interesting example. When I started here at L+M about 10 or 11 years ago, when we had a patient who had prostate cancer, we treated almost the whole pelvis.
Wow.
So they had all kind of simple symptoms because it impacted that bowel. Now we use what is probably best described as a GPS unit that is inserted into the prostate, and all we're treating is an itsy-bitsy tiny speck, getting the same effect as we did with the whole field, but no side effects.
So it's really just targeting the cancerous cell, and that's it, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's huge, isn't it?
It is. And we have cutting-edge treatment for breast cancer and radiation now. We've been very fortunate to be able to have the technology that you really only get at very, very large centers. And our affiliation with Yale and our long-standing relationship with Yale has provided us the best of the best when it comes to radiation therapy.
Are there things that people might be apprehensive about or concerned about and for whatever reason hesitant about maybe, exploring the possibilities of getting treatment at a cancer facility like L+M Cancer Center? What might they be concerned about? Or just, it's probably lack of knowledge, right?
I think it's lack of knowledge, but I also think that sometimes patients at home find out they have cancer, and they see ads on television for some of what we would call the for-profit types of cancer centers around the country and think, wow, look at what their cure rates are. Look,
Very deceiving.
the bottom line is that when you come into this facility or when you're treated in this community, you're getting the same treatments that are being provided at those centers. And if anything, we're going to minimize the overkill in terms of testing and sometimes multiple MRIs, which end up being the burden of that patient. So we're doing the best with the least amount of financial impact on that patient also. And that's a huge problem for cancer patients today. They're always worried about what's my copay going to be? Am I going to be able to afford this? Which is why we have that full-time financial counselor who can help that patient work through the system. And as you know, the insurance system right now is a difficult system to work through.
Yeah.
But she's a certified access person, so she's able to help people even in terms of getting insurance.
I was asking about what something people would be apprehensive about going in. I think their insurance or maybe lack thereof. They just think, well, I can't do this, I can't afford this, so I'm just not going to go.
Or they really stretch themselves to have to travel out of the area. They'll travel maybe to Philadelphia or to Minnesota thinking, I can't get any other treatment but there. And if you talk about Dana-Farber, many of the physicians who are the researchers at Dana-Farber are the ones who've written the textbooks. And when I think of Yale radiation, two of the physicians that we have in our center actually have written the textbooks on radiation oncology.
Wow, that's impressive.
So, we minimize what we have here locally because everybody says, oh, we have to go out to get the best. You get the best right here in your community.
Yeah, don't have to leave.
No.
And you feel much more comfortable about it too. And the setting, the environment where it's at, that has that calming influence too. Are you out and about a lot? Are you going around the other L+M facilities a lot? Or are you strictly in the cancer center for the most part?
I'm actually at both the main campus
Okay.
and I'm at the cancer center. The role I play at the main campus is an operations person, so I help to facilitate other program development. Very similar to what I did at the cancer center.
Are you able to see how many people are coming from Rhode Island that are opting to go to L+M as opposed to maybe going to Boston or maybe going to L+M instead of going to Yale? Can you see those numbers?
We track them.
Okay.
We do, and actually we have an amazing project specialist who that is really all she does. She's a great numbers person, so she can go into the Connecticut Hospital Association and actually track our trends. Why are people leaving the community? What is it that we can offer? And that's something we always look for, and I think it's important that the community realizes. We look to see what it is that you're asking for, and then we try to be able to provide it so that you don't have to leave the community.
Aside from the facility itself, it's so simple and so easy and so calming, and it's literally, never mind once you get into the facility, literally right off the highway.
It is.
Literally right off the highway. You get off the exit, it's right there. And
it's easy access. It's easy to get around the facility. We have also a great group of volunteers who come in every day, and they specifically came to L+M to volunteer because they wanted to be at the Cancer Center. And they do Healing Touch. So when we talk about supportive services, which is wonderful, feet and hand touch during treatments really calms individuals down. We do guided imagery. It's a wonderful setting. It's like what you think of like the umbrella of taking care of the patient. It's not a single chemotherapy or single radiation, it's the whole package.
I would imagine, because the facility hasn't been open that long, I would imagine there's some bugs here, some tweaks there.
Of course there is.
And from the time that we were there before it actually opened to now, but every day is it's getting better.
Right, and we continue to ask our customers what it is that they want, and our customers, whether they're our patients or the customers being the referring physicians, what would they like to see in our center, and we tweak it as we need to basically satisfy what their requirements are.
We'll put the website up on the screen one more time. Marianne Nash, nutritionist and the clinical lead for the L+M Cancer Center in Waterford, Connecticut. We learned a lot today, and it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much, Sean. I love talking about the building.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. You can see this show and many others on our YouTube sites. We will see you next time. Take care.